There's a miracle that happens when people are working for this mission. The ability of these dogs to see a need and fill it as these loving beings. It's an incredible, you can't sum up what we do from the parts.
PTSD is not going so well for the military. As you know, the statistics are pretty daunting with the veteran community. And so are these animals able to contribute to pushing off some of the decisions that are being made?
They are really focused on kind of helping with those invisible war wounds and treating those symptoms. So they do things like interrupt nightmares. They can interrupt anxiety. As we were trying to test it with some of our current veteran clients, some of them said, the good news is I don't have as many nightmares as I used to since getting the dog. So it definitely is having a huge impact.
Welcome back to the Lion Air Museum. I get excited every time I come here, Paige, and it's an unbelievable. We've got Paige Mazzoni online with us. She can't see the full scope of the museum, but here on display are 10 or 12 aircraft from World War II through the Korean conflict, and then the General Lion, when he put this museum together, he took some of his auto collection. He has one of the premier auto collections in the world on display here, along with these airplanes. And I was telling the story this morning about the Fuddy-Duddy, which is a B-17 bomber that's on display here. One of the last remaining, I think it's 8 flying fortresses that are still flight-worthy, as all these other planes are. The B-26 bomber, the 1935 DC-3, the C-47 cargo plane that General Lion flew in the Korean conflict, dropping off what they called pyramid jumpers that would be released out over North Korea with armaments, explosives, money, war paraphernalia, and their mission was to win North Koreans over to the South Korean cause and to blow up bridges and to eliminate risk and whatever. But when they were dropped off, they were parachuting in. It was a one-way mission. It was entirely up to their own capacity to get back to South Korea on their own. And so what a mission. Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit different than when I commute to work. So Paige Mazzoni, we're so excited to have you, and we're going to be showcasing an organization that I just recently got introduced to called Canine Companions. And Paige is the CEO of Canine Companions. Paige, welcome to BePositive. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I am thrilled and excited to be here.
Well, and there's thrilling and exciting stories. Just a quick debrief on Canine Companions is an organization, and Paige can give us color, but bottom line, raising service animals for individuals that need assistance and the scope of what these animals can do. We were introduced to this by friends of ours, Dennis and Allison Gilmore, back in September when, Paige, we toured the corporate headquarters up in Santa Rosa, California, and blown away doesn't give it justice. I was just marveling at the capacity of what these animals can do and the precision, what I now share stories on how when they're called to work, laser lock, focus, their eyes to yours, and just ready for command, ready for performance, ready to do what they're asked to do. And then when they're released to be a dog, and all of a sudden they're chasing their tail and rolling around on the grass and hopping and jumping, and then called back to work, and instant laser lock again. I mean, it's one of the most phenomenal experiences. So welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, we were started in 1975, and we actually invented the concept of service dogs to help people with physical or neurological disabilities. So different than Seeing Eye, which was in existence.
Right.
But our dogs do over 45 commands to help people, retrieve items, open doors. We have hearing dogs that help people with auditory loss of various kinds. So our dogs are truly, truly focused on helping their person that they're matched with. And as you say, they are dogs, so they're still wonderful, playful and fun when they're not working. But when they need to work, they are 100% focused on their person and helping them have greater independence.
Well, you haven't used this description, but I'm using it. I bill you as in the miracle business. Does it feel that way? Do you feel like you're extending miracles, or is it just another corporate campaign?
Oh gosh, no. Yeah, it absolutely feels like we extend miracles. We get stories all the time of how the dogs, because these dogs are trained, we give them the building blocks, and our trainers are extremely talented and give them these building blocks. But when they go home with their partner, who's our client, they continue to learn how to help that person. So we hear stories all the time of our dogs, you know, in figuring out what their person needs and showing up just in time. And so we've had, clients, and you're going to hear from some of them
Right.
who really their lives are just completely changed. They have opportunity and they are able to get through difficulty and be able to do things that before they might not have thought was possible because of their disability. So they really are. They're little bundles of joy and miracles.
Yeah. There's a quote from Bon Jovi that I was going to share with you on miracles. He said, "Miracles happen every day. Change your perception of what a miracle is, and you'll see them all around you." And
Yep.
that was my impression as you toured us through the compound up in Santa Rosa, the Canine Companion Compound, and introduced us to the breeding area and the instruction area and the training area and the veterinary
Yep.
and the veterinarian hospital and my eyes were the size of saucers, and I was
It's
seeing miracles just in the production of these animals. I mean, what's it like to bring these animals up? What's the training
it's
entail?
it so there's a whole process. So we purposely breed all of our dogs because we want them to have as best a chance as possible at succeeding as a service dog, because there's so many people that need our dogs. So we have part of the miracle of our dogs is that there are wonderful volunteers at every stage of the process that love these dogs and give them homes and give them the best chances. So we have people who handle the breeder dogs and the early puppies and the births, and then they hand off to puppy raisers like the Gilmores, who introduced you to us. And those puppy raisers raise the dog from 8 weeks to 18 months about and teach them their first 20 commands. But more importantly, they get them out in the world and they get them socialized and they build this loving relationship of trust and everything out there in the world so the dog can work in that world. Then they turn into our trainers. Our trainers are on our one of our 6 campuses, and they train them for 6 to 9 months, and then they're paired with a client who they continue to do more miracles with. And it's, as you say, there's a lot of science in what we do, there's a lot of operational strength in what we do, but it's all the gray miracle in between, all the love, all the attention, all the commitment to the mission and getting these dogs out, and the ability of these dogs to see a need and fill it as these loving beings. It's an incredible, you can't sum up what we do from the parts, because the parts add up to way greater goodness in the world than just the parts.
It's a great way to describe it too, because you look at all of the individual elements that it takes from
Mm-hmm.
breeding to birth to initial training. We're, as you know, raising our first puppy, the famed Harold the Sixth,
Yeah.
and he's got paws the size of saucers. We kind of feel at times that he's been crossbred with a rattlesnake as he goes through the puppy stage
Oh.
and mouthing. He's got sharp teeth, and he's introduced those to us, but we're working through that. But even in the early weeks, we've had him for just 8 weeks, and what we're seeing in his progress, and as he
Mm-hmm.
settles down, and of course he's going to be a puppy, and we have our puppy moments, good and challenging, but we're starting to see some of these acuities, some of these skill sets develop at an early stage. At least I'm picking up subtle things. And one of them is
Yep.
the eye contact, like I described, that laser lock. And
Yep.
with the most basic commands that we're teaching him with, we're not training, obviously, we're just raising him with the basics, but he locks his eyes periodically.
Yeah.
And I go, this is magical. This is unbelievable.
It's fascinating to watch, and it's really wonderful to watch when those puppies, they get the first initial round of it with you puppy raisers, who are incredible, and we couldn't do our mission without you. And then when you see them with the clients, so Lance, who's going to be talking, and his dog, you see as they move through their life with their client, they are just so laser locked, and it becomes, they don't even have to be asked all the time to look at their person. They just know when their person needs them, which is part of the magic that we hear. We have a veteran in Texas who, his dog knows when his pain is increasing, and his dog will just go to him and help him with it, or get, know to get the medicine. It's an incredible bond that builds, and that bond is part of the eye lock and part of the attention. It's also just part of the magic of these dogs really know what to do.
So that is an example, knowing when to get medication for these
Mhm.
episodes of pain that flare up. Intuitive on the animal's part, or is that trained into them?
It's both, right? So initially it's trained, it's a behavior and a skill that is trained, but then the intuition comes in. So another example, we have a hearing graduate who told me a story about her dog kept going to the basement door and alerting her and taking her to the basement door. And she got irritated and said, "There's nothing in the basement. Stop taking me to the basement door." The dog wouldn't give up. Well, she finally went down. Her CO2 alarm was going off, and there was a 12-house gas main line leak. And if anyone had turned on a stove, 12 houses would have blown up. So that dog
Yeah.
was trained in the skill to alert and to know what to do when they hear a sound, but had the intelligence and kind of the intuition to know to override the command to knock it off and to keep pushing until the person went and figured out what the sound was.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. High impact. The
Hi.
I wanted to ask you, with the role that you're playing,
Mm-hmm.
CEO, you're at the top of the food chain in terms of leading the organization, and you're in the miracle business. But do you get to see these miracles, or are you just, as I described your day, with octopus arms, touching so many things and controlled chaos and the demands that are on you, or do you get to pause and actually soak in these moments?
I absolutely get to pause and soak in the moments, and it's why it's the biggest gift of a job I've ever had. It's not
Yeah.
really a job; it's an honor every day. I mean, every day someone calls. I've had veterans tell me that they wouldn't be alive if it weren't for their dog,
Mm.
and that's a miracle. That hits you. It's also a huge responsibility to keep getting more dogs to more people because we know we're helping. But yeah, it's in watching the dogs with the clients. I mean, Lance is someone who can make me cry every time he talks about us. His story is pretty miraculous. Um, I think it's also in watching our employees. There's a miracle that happens when people are working for this mission, because one of the wonderful things about our mission is it's a tangible impact very quickly.
Mm.
And so you get so engaged and you're making a difference. And so you keep working harder and harder to make that difference. And that's another part of the miracle I get to see every day, is people who, might have a frustrating day or might have a bad day, but they really are figuring out how to get more dogs to more people to help more people.
Yeah.
And, in the world, that's kind of a miracle to get to watch every day.
Oh, yeah, for sure. How large is the organization? I had no idea. But in terms of
Uh,
the number of employees, the number of dogs, the number of puppies that are being raised currently.
sure. So we have, in our history, we've placed over 8,000 service dogs. In fact, we just recently found out that 1 in 4 service dogs credited by Assistance Dogs International, which is the accreditation body in the US, are canine companions dogs. So that's pretty good. We right now we have about 300 employees, and we placed 450 working dogs last year. So we want to grow. We want to do more than that, but we have a pretty big impact. In any given time, we probably have about 1,400 dogs out with puppy raisers, and about probably another 1,000 to 1,100 at all of our campuses.
Unbelievable numbers.
Yeah.
I'm just astonished on that kind of impact. And especially, I was going to ask you about the military channel. As you know, we've shared with you our son is
Hmm.
serving in the U.S. Navy currently, and the military has the tailings from what they're asked to do of the impact of
Right.
PTSD. And
Right.
PTSD is not going so well for the military. As you know, the statistics are
Sure.
pretty daunting with the veteran community that are succeeding at suicide 20, 25 times a day. And so,
Yeah.
are these animals able to contribute to pushing off some of the decisions that are being made or arresting PTSD?
Absolutely. In 2018, we rolled out our category of service dogs for veterans with PTSD. And as you say, the need in the military is so huge that our dogs could help a lot of other categories of people, first responders, a lot of other people. We really are focused just on the military because we want to serve as many as we can. And what those dogs do, they have all the other skills as well, but they are really focused on kind of helping with those invisible war wounds and treating those symptoms. So they do things like interrupt nightmares. They can interrupt anxiety. They can go into a room and turn on the lights. They have commands to create space around the veteran when they're out in public, which often is a problem.
Where they're
And
feeling
we're
enclosed, and then the dog can intercede
right.
and actually create space.
Yes, and we have been told by so many. In fact, we have an exciting announcement coming with some technology we've patented to help us perform some of those tasks even better and even faster. So we're working on a way to make nightmare interruption happen sooner before the veteran is in the full-blown nightmare. And we're going to be rolling that out in the next month or so. And as we were trying to test it with some of our current veteran clients, some of them said, we'll do anything you want us to do, but the good news is I don't have as many nightmares as I used to since getting the dog. Yeah. So it definitely is having a huge impact.
So I want to get granular. Nightmare intervention. What is that?
So if the veteran is starting to toss or turn, or make audible noises and is visibly going into a nightmare, the dog is trained to either pull the blanket off or jump on the veteran, whichever one the veteran prefers. And so they are literally trained to interrupt the nightmare. What we're working on now is a device that will monitor the heart rate, and the veteran can set it themselves. So when their heart rate is going up before they start visibly showing the signs, it will alert the dog, and the dog will interrupt sooner, hopefully getting there before the veteran is in the full-blown nightmare.
It's
and if you think about that, it's a biometric. So we could also use it for anxiety in public. A lot of veterans have a hard time in airports. So if they're walking into the airport and they're getting anxious, as one example, the dog can, lean on them, lean into them, kind of say, hey, I'm here. You can calm down. You're starting to ramp. Because a lot of times they don't even realize they're starting to ramp until it's full blown.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I haven't seen many testimonies of this, but I have one example where we were with a veteran and his wife and touring. We happened to be in Thailand and going through some of the water canals on the longboats, and then the water canals would get tighter and tighter, and then there would be overhang from the jungle. And this fellow was a Vietnam veteran, and he had, just like you described, that ramp of at first, maybe a little bit fidgety, and then, eyes flaring a little bit, and then vision darting left and right, and then the physical response of heart rate accelerating, and it just teeter-tottered. And then he had an episode where it brought him right back to whatever he was called to do in the Vietnam War, and didn't have a service animal. He ultimately was brought to the side of the waterway and released, being able to get out of the boat so he wasn't confined, and then over time it teeter-tottered back down. But first time I ever saw that. And
it's hard, you really feel for what they have gone through when you see it. We went on a legislative tour with one of our veterans with PTSD, our first class, trying to get Congress to support benefits and helping to pay for the, veterinary care for the dog. And the gentleman we were with, very Marine, upper rank, very, very professional, very contained. And the dog started, but he was in an atmosphere that was extremely frustrating to him because his PTSD was from pulling bodies out of a bombed embassy when he felt like kind of the administration left them alone over there to deal with this, right?
Yeah.
So he was around people that he gets very frustrated with, and it was very triggering. And the dog started, as we were walking back, like we were walking through crowds in the Capitol Mall at lunchtime. So lots of people.
Yeah.
And I really didn't notice that the gentleman, I mean, I started noticing after the dog started doing the behavior, but the dog started kind of walking around him, walking beside him, walking around him. And he said, "What is the dog doing?" And I finally said, "Oh my gosh, he has your six. He's walking behind you to create space." And that's exactly what the dog was doing. And the gentleman said, "I could never have done this trip with you guys if I didn't have the dog." So they're amazing, and they really, really create possibility.
What about in the expanding in the veteran community? Obviously, the people
Mhm.
report the suicide rate it's actually rising. But what is
Yeah.
not often spoke of is this higher suicide rate with the spousal community of the military members, and then the washout of what is spilled over the kids, the children.
Yep.
And so,
Yep.
okay, a canine companions animal comes in as a service animal for the veteran.
Yeah.
Do they have impact on spouses, impact on kids?
Yeah, it's one of the things we just did a veteran survey of our veterans with PTSD, and one of the things that they report the most is, stories like, "I couldn't go to the grocery store. My wife couldn't leave me alone. My wife was trapped in this world with me, and now I have my dog. I can go to the grocery store by myself. My wife can go and leave me at home. I could go to my kids' events, which maybe I wasn't able to go to their events before." I think one of the most profound ones we heard, well, two, I think with the nightmares, a lot of times they punch their spouse in the nightmare. It actually becomes violent for the spouse. And the spouses have said, "Yeah, I can sleep. I'm not scared about what might happen in the middle of the night because the dog's going to handle it." Another example, we had a veteran who hadn't been out of his house with his family, so didn't do anything with his kids or his family because he just couldn't for years. He got his dog. 6 months later, he took his kids to Disneyland. And that just tells you like how profound. I mean, there are a lot of people who don't like going to
Well,
Disneyland.
from
Like,
agoraphobic almost, right?
yeah,
Can't be around
yeah.
people to now being in this concentrated madness of Disneyland.
And had a wonderful time and got to spend that time with his children. So it's pretty transformative, and it really helps the families as well.
With the Be Positive podcast, our calling cards are the three words of optimism, hope, and encouragement. And I saw this comment. I don't know if you've crossed paths with Nicholas Vujicic. He's a motivational speaker, but from Australia, now American, born with no arms, no legs. And in today's culture, I don't know if the word is encouraged or not, but he speaks to disabilities. And he said this. He said, "For every disability you have, you are blessed with more than enough abilities to overcome your challenges."
Yep.
With the
I
perspective of no arms, no legs.
Yeah, I think that is one of the most transformative things for me personally in this
Mm.
role is, I think we all tend, gross generalization, but I think we tend to see someone with a disability and feel pity. And what I have found in this role is I see so much to be respected and admired and inspired by. Our clients do not see their disabilities as a limit. The dogs help them for sure and give them even more opportunity, but they're very focused on that opportunity. They're not focused on what they can't do. They're focused on what they can do and how the dog is going to help them do it. And that has been really transformative for me as a person. Like, check yourself. You've really never had that hard a day, and you should look at your hard days as a potential for what could be better, not as a roadblock. So it's very, when you talk about the magic and the miracles of this work, that's one of the magic and miracles, is just this whole different perspective about how life is basically good, not hard.
Staring at what's right instead of what's wrong. I want to ask, let's take this first person. One of your biggest challenges that you've had personally. Can you share something? And then
For me personally,
for you personally?
biggest challenges person. Probably one of my biggest is cutting myself off from doing things because I don't think that I won't be successful at it, right? Like
Self-limiting.
Self-doubt. Yeah.
And
Yeah. And this role has been amazing for that because, you have a whole community lifting you up every day. So even if you're stumbling, someone in that community is lifting you. And that's not just the employees, that's clients and volunteers and donors and all these people who are all about, we're all doing this together. And, if one of us is tripping, we'll all help. So it's been pretty incredible.
it's the misperception of the CEO where you have everything in control. You're in command. There's no challenges. You are an overcomer, right? There is no self-doubt. Not accurate.
Not accurate. No. I mean, I'm wired to overcome and to fight through, but absolutely self-doubt.
Do you feel like you have these animals, although they're not assigned to you, that they are also contributing to that overcoming?
Yeah, I have a hysterical story about that. There was a dog that was being trained to be a dog for a veteran with PTSD, and the dog was in the office of an employee. And I was talking to that employee and I was frustrated about something going on in that employee's department, but they didn't know it. I was hiding it. And I sat down, and the way I sat, I was agitated. And this dog came up and bumped my chin because it sensed my agitation. And the employee was like, "Oh, you're outed. You're angrier about this than you're letting on." So that's a very concrete example of these dogs help you on a day-to-day basis. But I also think it's walking around campus every day. First of all, we have the joy of a puppy. I get to hold puppies, but also it's walking around and seeing these dogs training, and they just look at you with these eyes, and these eyes are so sentient and so, as you described, so locked onto you.
Yeah.
And it just gives you this kind of warm, okay, everything's okay feeling. It's amazing.
It really is impactful. Well, we're going to spend time with a couple of recipients coming into our next two segments of Canine Companion Service Animals. Before we close out this episode, maybe my wife can bring Harold the Six over just so you can get a visual on our little package of delight. He's now 3.5 months old. It's crazy, as all puppies do, but he's, all paws. And since we've had him for the past 8 weeks, he's put on virtually 13 or 14 pounds. And so
I imagine he's huge from the way you're
oh my
talking
gosh.
about them.
So give me just a second.
Okay. Oh, Harold.
There we go. Let me
Oh
introduce
my
you
gosh,
to.
look at those legs.
I know
Long legs.
this is the famed Harold the Sixth, the name that's so bad it's good, and he's been of impact in our short time together. And here I'm thinking maybe I don't have PTSD or I don't have disability. And I say that tongue in cheek because I do. But there's been this impact on this animal in our short time together where I don't have the best night's sleep. January 5th, we have Harold the Sixth introduced to us, and for the past 8 weeks, I'm sleeping through the night, which I can't explain and didn't intend on, and he doesn't really know anything about that other than he's crated next to us, and there just seems to be that sense of calm that comes about.
Yep.
So in our next 2 episodes, I hope you can stick around. We're going to spend some time with Lance and Dan and hear their testimonies and the impact of their animals on them. You're with BePositive, the home of optimism, hope, and encouragement. Here at the Lion Air Museum, Paige Mazzoni, the CEO of Canine Companions. Thank you. I hope you can stay with us. Incredible stories. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the BePositive podcast. You can find us at YouTube, Spotify, Apple, on social media at BePositive Cause, or at our website, bepositive.life. This is the home of optimism, hope, and encouragement. We invite you to join us and become an ambassador of optimism.